civil liberties. Not least 20 people have been killed after a suspected suicide bomber killed himself outside the Afghanistan Foreign Ministry in Kabul. According to a Taliban official, it's the second major attack in the Afghan capital this year. The ISIL has claimed responsibility for the attack, but the Taliban is being accused of underreporting casualty figures. Kabul Police Chief Spokesman Khalid Zadran said security teams have been deployed to the site. Taliban Foreign and Interior Ministry officials have yet to come on the deadly explosion. Joining me on the news to discuss the deadly blast in Afghanistan, Kabul, is global affairs analyst Phatey. Thank you so much for joining us on World Now. UK has actually claimed, that it carried out the attack. To what end do you think they did this?
Well, I believe this just explains how the security situation in Afghanistan is still fragile and how internal the conflict that they are facing is. Mind you, that Taliban was considered a terrorist organization by the United States government. They deployed troops in Afghanistan. They fought hard against them. Now the Taliban is back in control. Usually, most people will think there will be relative peace and stability in the country and that you wouldn't see a lot or you wouldn't see any kind of terrorist attacks. But now you can see ISIL, which is a whole different terrorist group, a whole different faction, conducting attacks in Kabul, which is the capital itself. Quite a bold move, but it should not come as a surprise to anybody who understands all the factions that have rose from Iraq, the conflict in Iraq, and how different organizations have been set up, each fighting for power and control. So pretty much that is what we are seeing going on right now.
Blast comes, after recent blasts targeting foreign interests. For instance, Afghanistan has actually been rocked by dozens of blasts since the Taliban seized power last year. But then, we thought since the Taliban took over the control of the country, things like this shouldn't actually be heard in the country, do you think?
Well, no, I think it should be expected. Now you have the Taliban, and then you even have Al Qaeda, and then you have ISIL, which was a faction that broke away from Al Qaeda to be created, recruiting a lot of the disgruntled soldiers from Saddam Hussein's army. So and then within them too, you have all this Sunni Shia by some of these Islamist terrorist groups as well. So you have different factors coming together. So to think that, okay, the Taliban have taken over power in Afghanistan is not actually the end of seeing such attacks. It comes as no surprise. If one studies the history of conflict within the Middle East, of course, it is mostly shrouded under the disguise of religion. But there is always taxation and political power and control that each group and each faction is trying to get. So just because that the Taliban is in power in Kabul does not mean that the other factions, such as, ISIL is not a faction of the Taliban, but other groups such as ISIL would not try to gain control in certain parts of Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a very huge country too. Not just in Kabul will they try to get power, but we can see similar situations happening whether it's in or in other regions of Afghanistan. That should be, and more of this is expected to be seen.
Amazing. So ISIS-K actually claimed that the blast killed 20 people and that several diplomatic employees were among the dead. A senior diplomat was also among those killed in the blast. If anything, do you think the Afghan government could protect the citizens from all countries, including Chinese nationals?
I think it is up to Afghanistan, the Taliban government, to build either security corporations or come up with intelligence and security agreements with the Chinese, because the biggest investors in Afghanistan right now is the Chinese, not the Americans, not any European country. You know, Afghanistan is pretty much on its own when it comes to its economic development and diplomatic cooperation. So they are working hand in hand with the Chinese. I mean, I do not believe, or I do not strongly believe that the Afghan government are able to protect foreign nationals or investors in their own country right now. I mean, they don't have this, the security mechanism, they don't have the training, they don't have the intelligence. When I say intelligence, I mean like general intelligence in terms of security to be able to protect foreign nationals in their country. And I think that is the purpose of the attack. It makes it difficult for foreign investors to come to those countries. I mean, Chinese are already taking the risk. They are willing to take the risk. How the Afghan government, especially their interior ministry, would work with a country like China in order to strengthen their security is what is yet to be seen. But the question that remains is, if China takes that kind of step, what would be the reaction of key trading partners like the US and the European Union?
Some Chinese were actually killed last month in somewhere in Afghanistan. I guess their hotel somewhere. So if this continues to go on, what impact do you think it might have on Afghanistan, the Taliban themselves, the Taliban government, you know, in relation to other countries?
Expanding its military footprint. Okay, they have opened now a foreign base, let's say in Djibouti, right? This could be grounds for them to continue expanding their military footprint, coming up with a cooperation with Afghanistan and having a military footprint in Afghanistan and have their soldiers actually based in Afghanistan. Now, will this come right away? I don't think so. But could it be something that may come in the medium or long term? I can see that happening if the Taliban remain in power, that they can get military equipment and support from China, because they are not necessarily facing certain sanctions to prevent that, and because there's Chinese interest and economic interest and investments in Afghanistan. They may have an agreement where they would send their own troops to protect their own people and to protect their assets and key national investments in Afghanistan.
Absolutely.
So that could be an approach that they can take.
Absolutely, of course, because no country has actually formally recognized the administration of the Taliban, which took over Afghanistan in August 2021 with the speed and ease, you know, that took the world by surprise. But everyone is actually wondering the way forward for the Afghan people. Global affairs analyst Sam Phatey, thank you so much for your keenness of insight on this. Thank you.
My pleasure.